It began in a small town in Michigan, a place where dreams were small, but hearts were enormous. The year was 1911, and in a modest red brick workshop in Benton Harbor, a young man named Louis Upton sat in silence, staring at a pile of failed parts that once promised to change the world. Louis wasn't an inventor in the glamorous sense. He wasn't rich, and he didn't have the luxury of a big laboratory. What he had was curiosity, the kind that burns deeper than comfort, and the kind that ruins your sleep at night. He had one dream: to make washing easier. In those days, washing clothes was brutal. Women would stand for hours, scrubbing, rinsing, wringing out heavy sheets, hands raw from soap and cold water. It wasn't just housework. It was punishment disguised as necessity. Louis saw this pain, and in his mind, a question echoed endlessly. What if water and electricity could work together safely to do the work for them? It sounded ridiculous in 1911, because back then, electricity was feared. People saw it as invisible fire, dangerous, unpredictable, deadly. Mixing it with water, that was like handing death a handshake. But Louis didn't believe in fear, he believed in possibility. So he started small. He worked as a salesman for an insurance company, the job he hated but needed to pay the bills. Every night, after long hours of rejection and walking the streets of Benton Harbor, he'd go home and sketch diagrams, lines, bolts, gears, and motors. He wanted to find a way for a small motor to rotate a tub filled with water. To mimic the twisting motion of hands washing clothes, he would save his paychecks to buy second-hand motors, old tubs, and spare metal from junkyards. His garage was filled with smoke, sparks, and half-built dreams. Then came his first prototype, a wooden washing tub attached to a small electric motor. It looked crude, but it worked. For the first few minutes, it worked beautifully. Then, boom, a fuse blew, smoke filled the room, and the motor burned out. The combination of moisture and exposed wiring caused a small explosion. Louis coughed in the smoke, tears in his eyes, but not from the pain, from disappointment. He had tried to make water and electricity work together, and they had tried to kill him, but he didn't stop. He wrote in his journal that night, "If water and electricity can destroy each other, it means they have energy, and energy can be controlled." That sentence would become the foundation of his life's mission. Weeks turned into months. He partnered with his uncle, Louis Upton, who owned a small machine company that made wringers and hand-powered washing machines. Together, they decided to take Louis' electric idea and build it properly. Louis designed, Emery funded, and together they launched what would become the Upton Machine Company. The first models were sold quietly to friends, neighbors, and a few stores. It was slow, the machines were heavy, loud, and occasionally leaked. But they were revolutionary. For the first time, people could plug in a machine, fill it with water, and let electricity do the scrubbing. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. Still, success didn't come easily. Many people were afraid to buy them. There were stories of fires, of short circuits, of shocks. The Uptons faced ridicule from competitors and skepticism from banks. And then, the real blow came. A major order, hundreds of machines, was sent to a company in Chicago. Louis was ecstatic. It was the deal that could finally stabilize their small business. But when the machines arrived, they failed. Every single one. A defective gear in the motor caused the machines to jam, overheat, and burn out. The entire shipment was returned useless, unsellable. Louis sat in his office, hands on his head, heart shattered. The company was nearly bankrupt. His uncle's investment was gone. His dream, the dream of fusing water and electricity, was slipping away. But fate had other plans. That same week, a man named Lowell Basford, a sales representative from a growing retail giant called Sears, Roebuck & Co., came across the broken machines. Instead of seeing failure, he saw innovation. He approached Louis and said, "Fix them. I believe in what you're building. If you can make these machines right, I'll help you sell them to the world." Louis took the deal. He worked for months, redesigning every piece, improving insulation, sealing wires, stabilizing motors. He was obsessed. He didn't sleep properly for weeks. He had no money. but he had purpose. And when he finally delivered the redesigned machines to Sears, they worked flawlessly. Sears placed a massive order. The Upton Machine Company was saved. That partnership would soon change the name of home appliances forever. As demand grew, so did their ambition. They started making washers under the Kenmore brand, sold exclusively by Sears, and then under their own name, Whirlpool. Louis didn't care much about fame, he cared about reliability. That word became his personal religion. He'd walk through the factory floors, inspecting machines himself. Workers admired him. He wasn't a CEO in a suit, he was a builder in grease-stained sleeves. He would tell his employees, "Remember, our machines are not just metal. They are freedom for someone's mother, someone's wife, someone's daughter." And that belief built Whirlpool. By the 1950s, Whirlpool had become one of America's most trusted appliance brands. They made washing machines, refrigerators, dryers, all symbols of the modern American home. Families felt proud owning one. The name Whirlpool became synonymous with comfort, trust, and progress. But the story of Whirlpool is not just a story of rise. It's also one of slow, silent decline, the kind that happens not through explosions, but through exhaustion. Because what began as a dream of one man soon became a corporation led by numbers, not vision. Louis Upton, the man who once fought to combine water and electricity, would later watch his company drift toward a new era of business that no longer valued invention, but cost-cutting. The same spark that built Whirlpool was slowly fading. When Louis Upton looked out the window of his Michigan office in the late 1940s, he saw more than just chimneys and machines. He saw a dream that had survived storms, fire, bankruptcy, and doubt. He saw the symbol of what determination could create, the first electric washing machine that worked safely, reliably, and beautifully. But success has a way of demanding more than it gives. Whirlpool was growing fast. America, after the war, was obsessed with the idea of modern living. Homes were being built, families were expanding, and convenience was the new American dream. And Whirlpool was at the center of it all. The company began to expand its production lines, opening new plants, hiring thousands of workers, and introducing new models every year. The sound of assembly lines became the heartbeat of Benton Harbor. It wasn't just a town anymore, it was Whirlpool's kingdom. Yet behind the hum of machines and the smiles of executives, there was an invisible pressure building, the pressure to keep growing, to keep selling, to keep satisfying investors who didn't understand the blood and heartbreak that had built the company. Louis was a man of craftsmanship. He believed every screw, every wire, every seal mattered. But the new generation of executives wanted something else. Speed. The world was changing. Profit was the new passion. Louis watched as production schedules tightened, costs were cut, and some of the materials that once made Whirlpool machines last a lifetime were replaced with cheaper ones. He protested, he warned them. He told the board, "If we forget why we started, we'll lose what made us different." But time has a cruel way of silencing old voices. As the 1950s turned to the 1960s, Louis stepped back from daily operations. His health was declining, and the company he built was becoming something he no longer recognized. He remained on the board, a respected figure, a symbol, but no longer the man making the calls. Whirlpool kept growing, acquiring smaller companies, expanding into Europe and Latin America, and becoming a global giant. The name Whirlpool began appearing in millions of homes across the world. It was the mark of reliability, the machine that made life easier. But as success spread, the soul of the company began to thin. In the 1970s, economic recessions hit. The oil crisis raised energy costs, and inflation chewed through consumer spending. Whirlpool, desperate to maintain profits, began outsourcing parts of production. The focus shifted from craftsmanship to efficiency. Factories that once built machines with human pride were now driven by mechanical precision and cost control charts. And yet, nobody outside the company noticed. The ads still shined with smiling families. The machines still looked modern, but inside, something was changing. By the 1980s, Whirlpool was a global leader, but internally, it was struggling. Competition from Japan and South Korea was rising fast. Companies like LG and Samsung were mastering the art of sleek, efficient, and affordable appliances. They studied American brands, learned their weaknesses, and moved faster. Whirlpool, proud and slow-moving, began to stumble. Louis Upton had passed away by then. He never lived to see the quiet unraveling of the empire he built. But those who worked under him remembered his words. A company that forgets people for profit will eventually wash itself away. The irony would come to haunt Whirlpool decades later. Through the 1990s and early 2000s, Whirlpool began buying competitors to stay alive: KitchenAid, Maytag, Amona, and others. On the surface, it looked like victory. The headlines called it expansion, but behind the scenes, the company was drowning in complexity, managing too many brands, too many factories, too many debts. And while they were busy acquiring, they weren't innovating. The machines that once symbolized durability now became symbols of planned obsolescence, built to last a few years, not generations. Consumers began to notice. Reviews turned negative. Repair technicians joked that old Whirlpools never die, only the new ones do. It wasn't just a brand issue, it was a cultural one. The spirit that Louis Upton poured into his invention, that fearless attempt to unite water and electricity, was gone. In its place stood a boardroom filled with people who had never built a machine with their own hands. They looked at charts, not washers. They studied numbers, not needs. And slowly, Whirlpool began to lose what made it special. Then came the financial crises of the 2000s. Sales dropped. Factories closed. Thousands of workers lost their jobs, including in Benton Harbor, the very town that had raised the company from dust. People who once wore Whirlpool uniforms with pride now stood outside the same gates, holding pink slips and memories. It was tragic irony. The company that once gave people freedom from labor now gave them unemployment. But Whirlpool still carried on, like an old ship that refused to sink, even as water leaked through its cracks. Executives changed, strategies shifted, but the foundation, the one built by a man who believed in balance between progress and principle, had weakened. In 2011, Whirlpool celebrated its 100th anniversary. There were speeches, documentaries, and glossy marketing celebrating the century of innovation. But behind the celebrations, something felt hollow. The same year, the company laid off over 5,000 employees, including many in the US, as part of cost restructuring. To the public, Whirlpool was still the American icon. To the workers, it had become a memory of what America used to be. And perhaps the saddest truth of all was this: Louis Upton's original dream, to merge water and electricity to serve humanity, had evolved into a corporate machine powered by numbers, not ideals. He had spent his youth trying to make water and electricity coexist safely. Now, his company was drowning in the very current of its own greed. Still, Whirlpool wasn't done fooling, because what came next wasn't just financial decline, it was cultural decay. The brand that once symbolized trust began to lose faith among the people who once loved it. Machines became less reliable. Customer complaints grew. Competitors started surpassing Whirlpool not just in technology, but in heart. And quietly, without explosions, without scandal, Whirlpool began to fade from the center of innovation to the background of history. A once glorious empire was now struggling to stay relevant in the very world it helped build. And as the years rolled on, one painful question began to echo through Benton Harbor. What happened to the company that used to care? By the time the new millennium rolled in, Whirlpool had transformed into something Louis Upton could barely recognize. The world was faster now, digital, connected, and restless. Consumers didn't just want durability anymore. They wanted features, designs, and smart technology. But Whirlpool, the once pioneering name that gave the world its first safe electric washer, had become an old soldier, trapped between two worlds. Too big to move quickly, too proud to admit it had fallen behind. The tragedy wasn't sudden, it was slow, like rust forming beneath shiny paint. For decades, Whirlpool had prided itself on being the world's largest home appliance maker. But those words began to lose meaning when innovation stopped keeping pace. In the quiet corridors of corporate headquarters, meetings turned from creative sessions into crisis management. Every year, executives fought the same battle: how to cut costs without collapsing quality, how to please investors without betraying customers, how to keep profits growing when loyalty was fading. And beneath it all, the ghost of Louis Upton lingered, the man who once dared to mix water and electricity in the name of helping people would have never recognized this culture of endless cost control. In 2008, during the global financial crisis, Whirlpool's revenues dropped sharply. Families stopped buying new appliances. Homes foreclosed. Factories slowed down. The company responded with mass layoffs, not just in America, but around the world. Factories in the US, once symbols of industrial pride, were quietly shut down. Entire towns that depended on Whirlpool were left behind, hollowed out, forgotten. Benton Harbor, Michigan, the birthplace of Whirlpool, became one of the poorest cities in America. The irony was unbearable. The same city that once gave birth to innovation, to jobs, to hope, now had streets lined with abandoned houses and unemployed workers. The very empire built on the promise of making life easier had indirectly contributed to making life harder for the people who built it. Whirlpool executives spoke of global competitiveness. They said it was necessary to survive against cheaper Asian competitors, to stay efficient, to keep the shareholders satisfied. But those words, global competitiveness, became the quiet funeral hymn of local dreams. Jobs went overseas. Parts were outsourced. Customer service was automated. And the machines, the proud Whirlpool machines, started failing faster. Consumers noticed. They began posting online reviews saying things like, "My Whirlpool washer broke after 2 years. Customer service is impossible to reach. They don't make them like they used to." That last sentence, "they don't make them like they used to," was the echo of a century of decline. And deep down, it wasn't just about machines, it was about meaning. Whirlpool wasn't just losing customers, it was losing trust. Still, the company pressed on, rebranding itself as an innovation leader. They added touchscreens, smart features, Wi-Fi connectivity, but the magic was gone. Technology replaced soul, and the machines that once symbolized reliability now symbolized frustration. Meanwhile, competitors like Samsung and LG were not just selling washers, they were selling dreams. Sleek ads, modern homes, futuristic designs, everything Whirlpool once represented. And consumers moved on. Whirlpool tried to respond with mergers, redesigns, and new slogans. But you can't market your way out of lost integrity. Inside the company, morale dropped. Employees who once felt proud to wear the Whirlpool badge began feeling disconnected. Engineers complained that designs were being approved too fast, without proper testing. Some openly admitted that the machines were not as durable as the old ones, because they were not meant to be. And the cruelest part, it worked for a while. Shorter lifespans meant more replacements, more sales, but it also meant more broken trust. By the 2010s, Whirlpool's reputation began to fracture. Lawsuits over faulty dryers and washing machine fires emerged in several countries. Customers accused the company of ignoring safety issues. In the United Kingdom alone, millions of Whirlpool-made dryers were recalled after reports of fires linked to lint buildup. The company's response was painfully slow, bureaucratic, defensive, and distant. It wasn't the Whirlpool that Louis Upton built. The Whirlpool he dreamed of would have personally investigated, apologized, and fixed it. This Whirlpool, however, was a corporation, shielded by lawyers and press statements. The once admired brand became the subject of news reports and government inquiries. Public confidence eroded. And yet, the stock market applauded, because profits still looked fine. That's the dark truth of modern capitalism. A company can be dying on the inside while looking perfectly healthy on paper. Louis Upton's vision, once a fire of purpose, was now a flickering corporate candle barely keeping the light alive. He had spent his youth trying to make water and electricity cooperate without destruction, but his company was now drowning in the very storm of its contradictions, a business model that preached innovation but practiced imitation. By 2015, Whirlpool was still a giant, but it was a tired giant. Competitors dominated global markets. Consumers associated the brand with reliability in the past tense, and young people barely recognized the name at all. The company's once proud hometown of Benton Harbor had become a haunting reminder of the cost of progress. Empty storefronts, unemployment, and a bitter nostalgia for the days when Whirlpool meant something more than a logo on an appliance. Workers who had given 30, 40 years of their lives now watched their pensions shrink and their factories shut down. In interviews, some of them cried, saying, "We built this company with our hands. Now it's gone, and nobody even remembers who we are." It was a tragedy wrapped in silence. Not a scandal, not a collapse, but a slow erosion of everything human that once defined the brand. And as the years passed, Whirlpool's leadership continued to shift. Each new CEO promised renewal, each new strategy promised transformation, but no one brought back the fire. The story of Whirlpool was no longer about invention, it was about survival. And that is the saddest transformation of all. When a company built on purpose forgets why it exists and becomes a machine that merely breathes for profit. But Whirlpool's downfall wasn't complete yet, because every story like this has a moment, a breaking point, when what's left of legacy collides with the harsh reality of the present. For Whirlpool, that moment came quietly, not with bankruptcy or explosion, but with something far more devastating: irrelevance.